Hey guys, what's up? Today I'll be ranking the Star Ocean series from easiest to hardest. But first let me say that each of these games is pretty damn tough. That means even the easiest of them all is still quite challenging. Now I'm only going to cover the 5 main North American releases, so let's begin! Okay, we're gonna start with First Departure. Let me say first that I beat the PSP port, not the remasters on the PS4 and Switch. I found this first entry in the series to be the easiest for how balanced it is. The game's still tough for sure, but I personally didn't feel it as frustrating as all the others. Like I mentioned, it balances the difficulty pretty well, save a few boss fights that can be quite challenging, but I don't remember being particularly annoyed or overly defeated. Hell, I don't even remember grinding that much in this game or having a lot of trouble beating a certain boss or something. The final boss was tougher than most bosses, but that's normal. Overall, it's still a challenging RPG, but I just never felt it was that hard. Next up is The Last Hope. With this one I have an interesting contradiction. I played and beat both versions, the 360 and the PS3 one. I found the 360 version harder than the PS3 one. In fact, the latter was pretty much as balanced and at the same time as challenging as First Departure. A few bosses here and there definitely made it slightly harder, but the 360 version, I don't know why I felt it so unbalanced with certain bosses. The Phantom Soldier's part, for example, are several battles in a row and they were excruciatingly painful for me, even after grinding. In the PS3 release, I beat them all on my first try after grinding only for a couple of levels. The final boss, which I won't spoil, was also harder than the 360 version. I found the blind sides more difficult to pull off. Sometimes I will try them several times only to fail or to have them work miserably, like I was doing less damage to the enemies when I got them right. I'm not sure if it was only me, perhaps I learned from my mistakes with that version since it was the first one I played, and then a couple of years later, when I got the PS3 one, I was experienced and prepared. That could be it, but something still tells me the 360 release was harder. Next is Integrity and Fatelessness. There's not much to explain about this game because its difficulty comes straight for how poorly designed it was. The battle system is very infamous for being rushed, what with tries being on financial and time conflicts with Square Enix, but that's a story for another occasion. The camera and control issues here are so outrageous, it can often turn the easiest battles into a nightmare. Some bosses are pretty tough here, but I found regular enemies on certain areas to be even harder! The biggest issue is what I already mentioned about the camera and the controls, but the second issue is that the collision detection barely works cause some attacks are hard to pull off against them. For whatever reason that I can't explain, the enemies will sometimes just slaughter my characters in just a few seconds. This isn't a bad game at all in my opinion, it's good. The thing is that it jumps from too easy to too hard constantly, which leads me to blame the rushed and bad gameplay design it had. Coming up, the second story. I'm covering the PS1 original release. Brutal, simply brutal, near the end of the game. For the most part, let's say about 85% of the game, the second story won't be a walk in the park, but it won't be too hard either. It's just as balanced as First Departure as a matter of fact. Some bosses will give you a lot of trouble or even some regular enemies, but nothing out of the ordinary. Near the end, when you need to fight certain guardians, that's when it'll go apeshit with difficulty. Some of them are strong to some attacks or skills, so forget about going with your usual tactics or even using your preferred character. There's nothing convoluted about them, they're just too hard. But the final bosses are exactly what tried my patience so many times. I rage quit on them often, but at least I managed somehow with a lot of grinding and practice. Not a single one, however, comes remotely close to the actual final boss, which is downright impossible 90% of the time. But I don't want to spoil the game for anybody. I'm not sure if the PSP version changed this, but if you play the original, be absolutely sure to save on a different file before the final boss, because it's a point of no return and the game won't let you leave the dungeon. And the first one, Till the End of Time. This game can be stupidly hard because the controls and therefore the battle system are so hard to master. You can have a lot of trouble with regular enemies if you don't know how to fight with at least the main character. Maneuvering with the strong and weak attacks can be tricky as the controls are somewhat clunky, but that was made on purpose. Often you need to break the enemies with a slower attack that can be blocked. Skills are also attached to the same buttons, and I found it very difficult to make them work properly for a long time. Eventually I somehow understood the mechanics and managed my way through the game. But I'd like to point out that part of the difficulty comes straight from the damn puzzles. A couple of them immediately come to mind, like these one in the Kursla Caverns. You gotta mount this giant turtle-like creature called the Hauler to get across, and it's pretty much a mini-game that the game forces on you to advance with the main story, because controlling it is a huge pain in the ass considering how big it is, plus the sense of direction is kinda lame since the map doesn't help that much. You need to anticipate the forks in the road and the turns you'll do, and also each Hauler is a different type, like aggressive for example. There's way more to this minigame that I'm already explaining. I can't believe they overcomplicated something that should have been trivial in the first place. Another horrible puzzle is the one in the ruins of Bar. You get this dragon flute that you'll need to open certain doors. You need to play it to change the expressions of the icons shown in there, which come in different moods and colors. I'll never understand why Tri-Ace decided to include such complicated ideas into mere puzzles or minigames. Look, I love this game, but this is absolutely the hardest Star Ocean ever made. Alright guys, that's it. Don't forget that this was my personal opinion based on my own experiences with these games. If you have a different one, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!